Hello, and welcome to the podcast where our goal is to remind you that amidst the chaos and craziness of the world, there is still plenty of good that's worth shouting about. In each episode, we're going to be joined by nonprofit professionals, leaders, experts, and advocates to hear their stories, facilitate connection within the nonprofit sector, and hopefully put a smile on your face, because that's always nice. This is Nonprofit Connect with Matt Barnes. Let's share some good. This has been a Rogue Creatives production. All right. Well, Hardy Smith, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, Matt, it's great. I've been looking forward to this. Congratulations to you and your creative initiative and to launch the Nonprofit Connect podcast. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking over your resume and history and think you got a lot of experience. Before we jump into that, we always open with 3 random questions. So I've got a list of like 80 random. I think we're up to 80 or 90 random questions now, and then we have a randomizer that chooses 3. You ready?
Go fire.
All right, here we go. You can insert yourself into any film ever made. Which film would it be?
Dumb and Dumber. That's got to be That's got to be my all-time favorite. You know the line when he's there with the good-looking babe, and okay, what are our chances of ever getting together? And she says, what does she say? Well, 1 in a million.
Yeah.
And how does he respond?
So you're saying there's a chance.
I've got a chance. That's my motto in life. I've got a chance.
That's so good. Oh, my favorite line in that one is, and I'll censor myself, is when he wakes up and they're supposed to be in Colorado and it's all plains, and he looks around and he goes, that John Denver's full of. Oh man, that's a great movie. All right, good choice. I was not expecting that one from you. That's good. I like that. Good. If you had one album you could listen to pick one album to listen to for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh man, anything by the Allman Brothers.
All right. Okay. And last question, rainy days or sunny days?
Sunny days.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's pouring here today, and I just got back from a little anniversary vacation with my wife, ready to get back to work, and I wake up and it's pouring rain, and I'm like, oh, I just want to take a nap now. I like the sun. Where you at? Where are you located?
Daytona Beach.
Oh, yeah. So you do like the sun, yeah.
Yep.
We're on the opposite side in Newport Beach, and we like the sun here too. But
all right,
pouring today. All right, well, let's get into your nonprofit expertise. What is your origin story? How did you get into nonprofits, and what are you doing?
I appreciate that. Great question, Matt. I have literally been involved in nonprofit work, community organization, community activation, literally for all of my life. I was raised in a family that believed in giving back, community service, and just, that's just kind of where I came from. So I've had a lifetime of lived experience working with, not professionally and personally, with nonprofit organizations nationwide. And then what I add to my work now as a speaker and a consultant is a full 30 plus year career in the world of NASCAR racing. So I bring in the world of not a driver. That's usually the first question. Well, wait, I never heard of you. What was your number? I don't remember. Well, not a driver, back of the house guy. And my role working with the NASCAR group of companies, because there were several companies, but worked all over the country. And my job mandate, Matt, was to recognize problems before they existed and make sure they didn't happen. And then by any chance, if I let something slip through the cracks, I darn well better fix it and fix it quickly.
Yeah.
So I bring that experience, a contrarian mindset that the NASCAR world is always challenging. It doesn't matter if you win, you're going to tear your car down to find out why you won.
Yeah.
And if you were second through 40th, second, according to Ricky Bobby and Talladega Nights, was first loser.
That's right.
So you're going to tear down your car to find out why you didn't win. So that contrarian world is something I bring to my work with in the world of nonprofits. Makes me a little bit different.
Yeah, it's kind of a next level of critical thinking. It's really pushing for, all points of view and what you can learn. Which, is so great because that's I mean, it's interesting to make the connection between NASCAR and all of that. It's not a sport I know much about, and so to hear about that is very I probably, Ricky Bobby is, the extent of my my knowledge of the sport. But it's so interesting to hear that and to see how I love seeing how people can bring different pieces together to use in unique ways. So now you're a consultant, you're traveling around speaking, and you've written a book called I can see it on the wall behind you, Stop the Blame Game. And is that I'm assuming that the book is sort of the foundation for the consulting and the talks and the things that you give. Can you tell us a little bit about what's the book about and what's your main kind of message?
Well, thank you so very much. And if it's okay to kind of call back to a previous podcast you
Sure.
had with one of my all-time favorites, Julia Campbell, and she was talking about her experience, if you recall, in the Peace Corps and her other
Yeah.
kind of advocacy type roles, and she was always liking to challenge. Well, and I kind of share that mindset. I just got that developed that mindset from a different place than she did, but we're kind of channeling that same don't accept status quo, right? You can
Sure.
be better than what you are. Well, in the world of nonprofits, the question of why don't board members do what they're supposed to do is probably one of the top one or two questions that keeps nonprofit leaders up at night, right? And any podcast, any blog, any LinkedIn group, anything, you're gonna see a constant drumbeat about frustration around, well, my board members just aren't doing what they're supposed to do. They're just not engaged. They won't raise money. They don't do this. They don't do that. Well, the more I got to thinking about that, I said, the world of nonprofits appears to be following the same best practices, if you will, to for board development, board engagement, board involvement, and those same practices don't appear to be getting the desired result that organizations want.
Yeah.
They keep getting board members. The situation continues and maybe even gets worse over time that board members just are a source of a lot of frustration. So we all know that line about, doing the same thing over and over, Matt, and expecting a
Sure.
different result, right?
Yeah.
So I said, I've got to find out about this. I just can't let this sit. Why don't board members do what they're supposed to do? Why is there such criticism? So what I did a few years ago was launch off into a research project. And what I did was ask board members. I asked board members across the country, okay, you're getting a whole, you as a sector are getting a whole as a group are getting a whole lot of criticism, Matt, about why don't you're not doing what you're supposed to do? Why is that? Could you elaborate? Could you go deep with me on that? And so, Matt, guess what? They told me, and I very crude. I do not profess to be a professional data gatherer or survey master.
Sure.
Very simple email, 3 or 4 open-ended questions to nonprofit board members that I had met across the country in my different activities and networking. And what I got back was a very clear, clear message of why good board members don't do what they're supposed to do and what turns them off. So I said, "Oh, holy smokes, I think I've found the holy grail." And so that evolved into the book that you see today, which has become an Amazon bestseller. It's doing way better than I thought it would do. So I'm certainly appreciative of the nonprofit world responding so positively to it. So the book, number one, shares it's from the board member perspective of why board members are not engaged, why they turn off, why they were good. And it's their perspective. And then so I take their perspective and then provide my insights on how you fix those situations. And there are a couple of key, I would say, self-inflicted issues that we as a nonprofit sector, we're doing these things to ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not in, so that's what the book is about. And I explain, and I'll be happy to share some key examples of that.
I'm curious because I have thoughts, guesses in my head of what those might be, having worked with a lot of nonprofits, and I'm wondering if is sort of clarity of the role a big one in there, because that's one that seems to come up a
Absolutely.
lot. Nonprofits often don't know how to use board members, and then they expect the board members to figure it out or to just know what they're supposed to do when the nonprofit really doesn't even know what it is that they're supposed to do.
That is a great point. Thanks for sharing that. There's a lot of great research by Board Source and other highly reputable organizations around and this is a consistent criticism of nonprofit staff being critical of their board members not having adequate knowledge of their roles and responsibilities. Well, every time I see those studies, Matt, I'm thinking, who are you going to blame me for being on your board and not knowing what I'm supposed to do? Who's supposed to coach me up? So what is the training? What's the adequate onboarding? What's the clarity? You mentioned the achieving clarity. And I
Yeah,
talk a lot about getting clarity in the book. The orientation process. Oh
right.
no, how many times is the orientation? And every time I mention this, there was way too much laughing going on in the room, which I don't take as a positive because it's kind of like, oh, I'm admitting I'm doing this.
Yeah, yeah,
Matt, it's okay, Matt, congratulations on being a new board member. And by the way, here's our board manual. Look this over. Let me know if you have any questions.
I think that
The
sounds like
end.
best case
The
scenario
end.
from what
And
I
that's
heard.
the end of the orientation process. So
Yeah,
so getting the clarity, a quick point on that. I'm a huge advocate in the recruiting process of getting to clarity. And I put an emphasis on getting the clarity that's yours and theirs. So you share, Matt, what the nonprofit is expecting of their board member, and then stop talking and let them explain, number one, what their expectations are for serving on the board, your
sure.
particular board. And then the third part of this critical conversation, Matt, is get to confirm acceptance
Right.
that they have agreed to whatever the ask is. So let me back up just quickly. Is your expectations and their list of expectations, do those match up?
Right.
Are they compatible? And they might not be. So right now, wouldn't that be a red flag? Might not be a good board member for
Right.
your organization, right? And another final point about clarity, so critical, Matt, to get clarity around expectations and acceptance, especially when fundraising is involved.
Sure.
Because my experience is the world of nonprofits. I mean, how often do you see, well, they're a board member, they should know they're expected to give money and raise money, right?
Right.
Because they're just expected to.
Right.
Well, you're in for trouble when you have that assumption.
Well, yeah, especially when you haven't communicated that assumption. You know,
Right, absolutely.
it's the same as, if I were to hire an employee and have a lot of expectations of what their skill sets are, what their how they're going to apply those, the whole kind of gambit, but didn't communicate any of that in the interview process and didn't communicate any of that in the orientation process. And then they get here and it's like, oh, by the way, this, and this. And they're going, well, I didn't even know that was a job I was signing up for, you know?
In the world, you're a marketing guy.
Yeah.
So if you want to sell refrigerators, cars, new houses, or anything else, and you have an ad and you're promising something. But when the customer walks into the store or goes to your online website and goes to purchase, and then all of a sudden the offer is not there anymore. That's
Yeah.
called bait and switch.
Yes.
And you could go to jail for that.
Right.
And I don't think you're going to go to jail for not fully explaining to a board member what the expectations are, but does it make sense? They get to that first board meeting and exactly what situation you just described. They get to the first board meeting and, oh, by the way, Matt, here's what we're expecting you to do. Well, that feels like bait and switch. Sounds
For
like bait
sure.
and switch, right? So now they're done. You've lost them.
I'm wondering if this, oftentimes starts innocently enough because I've worked a lot with startup nonprofits. And with startup nonprofits, I find more often than not, there's not an understanding of what the board is supposed to be there for, what their role really is. You just know you're required to have one. They usually start by grabbing a few friends or people that they, like a kind of a starter board there. And over time, it evolves. If they are successful and they grow, they're adding more people. They might be bringing in more people. They might be bringing in a little more formality. But that same sort of foundation of lack of certainty of how do I utilize this group? I have some ideas, I'm not sure, and then you start building expectations that haven't been communicated, and it starts at that foundational level. So I guess my question for you is A, do you see that? And then B, do you ever work with startup nonprofits, and what is the advice that you give them?
Holy smoly. Well, unfortunately, the situation you just described is not unique
No.
in the world of nonprofits. Unfortunately, it's all too common. And there are, I don't know, it's well over 1.5 million nonprofits of various sizes in this country
Yeah.
now. And they're nonprofits just like growing like gangbusters all the time. Somebody has a great idea, somebody has a good thought, a sincere thought, a way that they think they can help a particular or address a particular issue or a cause. Nothing wrong with that, but they jump right in and just exactly like you described. It's just no different than jumping in and starting a business. Oh, you know what? My grandmother makes the best meatballs, and I think I could open up an Italian restaurant based on and there's no other than your grandma's recipe for meatballs, and you don't have her there in the kitchen cooking, by the way, and you got nothing else. You've never run a restaurant, you've never run a business, and like what, 9 out of 10 new business startups fail,
Yeah.
pretty quickly in the first, same thing with nonprofits. So
Absolutely.
you start out with a passion,
Yeah.
and that's to be admired, right? You start out with this passion, you have a cause, you want to have an impact and you make a difference. But my advice is go the extra step. Make sure you've developed a business plan. Make sure and go to your local, and these are nationwide,
Yeah.
your small business development center. They're usually in community colleges. They're all over the country. They're a great resource, and there are other resources out there. But have a business plan, and what do you expect your board members to do?
Yeah.
And other than that legal requirement to have 3 or 4, just depending on what state you're in. And then you're exactly right, Matt, as you described, boards in nonprofits rather have a shelf life that expands. So there's the startup, and then they evolve, and then the board asks, initially it's probably could be an all hands on deck. The
Sure.
board members are doing everything. And that's okay. Just explain it to them ahead of time. Clarity, like we
Yeah.
talked
Yeah.
about, get the clarity. And then as you evolve, the board evolves too. But that's the big fail.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that failure to communicate board expectations is not limited to new startup nonprofits.
Oh,
It
no.
is it affects nonprofits who've been around for decades.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely, and I think my thought was that maybe even with those ones that have been around for decades, it started with that foundation that wasn't properly established in the beginning. You had said starting a nonprofit is just as hard as starting a business. I would actually argue it's even harder. We were having an event here a couple weeks ago, or a nonprofit connect event, and we were talking with our guests and about all of the paperwork and the requirements, and to be in compliance and all. It's actually greater, and there's so many people, I think, start nonprofits with this thought of, like you said, they're passionate, they've got something they love, or they want to do that they know how to do, and they just think, oh, I'm just going to start a nonprofit. I just file that form, and then I'm off to the races, and they don't realize, no, it not only do you need a business plan, you need an understanding of this particular type of business, and how are you going to get this done, and how are you going to grow, and how are all of that. These are most of the time people who are passionate about one thing, they know how to do that one thing, and they haven't really thought through anything beyond that, including whether somebody else in their area is already doing the same thing, and maybe they could partner up with them instead of starting something new.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of, I've been trying to work a lot with startup nonprofits to help them avoid some of these, because they've got great potential, and I want to see them grow, but if they're going to do it, I want to see them do it right, so that they don't end up in this place where they're 30 years in and they're successful, but they're burning through board members and burning through staff and all of that.
And unfortunately, a lot of nonprofits, professionals, and when I mentioned earlier at the outset about self-inflicted wounds, a lot of nonprofit professionals will say, "Gee, Hardy, that's great. You're talking about communication and talking to board members and relationships, but that just takes time, and I don't have time to deal with all of that." And I just kind of throw up my hands. Well, you're the one complaining about all the frustration you're
Right.
experiencing around your board members not wanting to do what you want them to do. And that's look in the mirror, look in the
Yeah.
mirror.
Well, it's like anything else in life. When you make a change, there is that investment of time up front, but it saves you
Right.
in the long run when you implement
Absolutely.
new procedures or processes, whether that's in business, in nonprofit, in whatever you're doing, personal life. And so many times it's making that conscious decision of, okay, I've got to stop, I've got to do this, and it's going to cost me time right now, but it's gonna be worth it in the long run. You got to people. Humans in general, I think we tend to think short term, and getting people to think beyond the short term is sometimes a challenge, at least in
You're
my
totally
experience.
100% on target. Nonprofits would do well to heed your thoughts and advice.
Well, speaking of thoughts and advice, okay, so what you've got, say you've got an audience, you do right now. You've got all these people listening, nonprofit leaders. What is your advice to them for where they might be at today with their boards? Where do you start?
Number one, get the right people.
Yeah,
And too many organizations put don't associate intentionality around board recruitment. And quite often, I'm a sports nut.
yeah,
I love college sports. And actually, to me, recruiting is like a second sport, right?
yeah,
So um, you've got to think in advance. And every board is different. Every organization is different. And even within an organization, the board you need the skills, experience I'm talking about that you needed 10 years ago, probably much different 10 years later in 2024, right? And,
sure,
and it's going to be, who knows what 2025 is going to bring. So, what are the skills that you need? What's the experience that you need? What are the talents that your particular organization needs for the next 3 or 4 year window? And then start building a list around potential board members who meet that criteria and start developing, recruit in advance, not, the last board meeting before the annual meeting and you're sitting around there, Matt. Oh, well, Matt's coming off the board and who do you think we could get to replace him? Gosh, I don't know. Matt, do you know anybody?
right,
Really, I don't know. I said, well, Matt knows well, and so all of a sudden there you are 30 days away from needing to fill a seat and no one has a clue.
Right.
Is there any reason to put yourself in that situation? No.
No.
Have your prospects in advance and maybe consider creating farm clubs of being able to get your board potentials involved as key volunteers and so they can demonstrate their capability for being a good solid board member for your organization. So work in advance, recruit board members with purpose in process. And if you have board members who aren't doing what they're supposed to do, chances are you do not have the right people.
Would you say that, or you haven't communicated to them what that is?
That's the next level part of all of this. So
Sure.
we've covered getting the clarity part.
Right.
Board members have shared with me, and I hope our nonprofit connect audience will really pay attention here, Matt. Board members have shared with me the number one reason why good board members turn off is poor communication. Poor communication. I'm not talking about frequency because Hardy, I can hear, well, Hardy, we do annual reports and we send emails and we have meet reports
Right.
at the board meetings and on and on. I'm not talking about the pile of communication. I'm talking about, is your communication effective?
Right.
And one of the things that we fail to take into account, you're in the communication business, Matt.
Yep.
So we fail to take into account, just visualize. If everyone listening today would just visualize their last board meeting, the faces around the room. Just
Yeah.
close your eyes, visualize those faces. Well, as you're kind of mentally looking at your board, every single one of those different board members has a individual different preference on how they prefer to be communicated with. So open your eyes now. Some may want detailed reports. Some may just can't get enough data. Some a simple text message might suffice.
Yeah.
Some an advanced phone call before a controversial item or a contentious type item is going to be on the agenda will kind of preempt a little angst that might get generated. So you've got to consider, are you being effective? So here's a real easy test. Nonprofit leaders, if you're wondering, are you being effective with your board members in your communication? How could you do that? How could you make sure you're being effective? Ask them.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about in a board meeting asking to a group, hey, how am I doing with communication? No, I'm talking about one-on-ones,
Yeah.
one-on-ones. So, Matt, how do you prefer to be communicated with? How often do you want to be communicated with? What type of information
Right.
would help you in your board experience? So, make sure you're being an effective communicator. Matt, you said something earlier, so very important because I can just hear right now so many nonprofit professionals right now on the podcast in the audience right now. Great. We're overworked, we're understaffed, we're underpaid, we're underappreciated, and now this guy is piling on more for us to do.
Right.
Just great, Matt. Where did you find this guy? I'm getting into what Matt said. You can preemptively do work in advance. Yes, more work on the front end, but on the back end is going to make your life so much easier and so much better, and is practically guaranteed to eliminate a good chunk of the frustration you may be feeling right now. So those are some quick hitters
Yeah.
on how to be more effective and have better relationships with your board members.
Well, and it seems to me that it's, the basis of any good communication. You've got to know your audience. And so taking the time to actually get to know them, what they bring, how they prefer to communicate, all of those things is going to make you more effective. And not only that, you're going to hopefully, I think, stop seeing your board as your adversary and instead as your ally, as part of, we're on the team together. And
Right.
it might take a little time to get there, but that's going to pay off when you suddenly have this team behind you, championing you and giving you the resources you need to accomplish the things you want to do, instead of
Yep.
this board that you have to go and fight for what you want, or whatever it might be. It's so interesting because, yeah, the larger organizations, very much the types of things you're talking about. The smaller organizations, what I see most often is they put together a board because they're required to. They don't know how to use them, so they have they're required once a year meeting, and the board members do nothing, not because they don't want to, but the founder is just doing all the work, and they're not
Right.
even thinking about, like, how do I utilize my board? It's like, oh yeah, I checked off that requirement. Okay, cool. And it's like, no, this is a group of people here meant to support you and the mission of the organization. How do we set this up to be a winning combination? And it sounds like this is what you're all about.
Yes. And a quick tag on communication, effective communication. Anyone who is in a successful long-term relationship, either personal or in business, knows the keys to a successful relationship. There's trust, there's attention, there's a showing appreciation, recognition of the other person, acknowledgement of how much the other individual means. But the number one, the key every single time, and in a training session, I ask this question: what is the number one most essential element to a successful relationship? 100% of the time, it's communication.
Yep.
So if you want good, solid communicate, you want relationships, excuse me, good, solid relationships with your board members, make sure you're being a good, effective communicator.
Yep.
And by the way, PS, what's the most important part of good communication? Listening.
Yep.
Listen to your board members. Listen to them.
That's great. This is I think, very good practical advice, for the people listening, because, yeah, I mean, whether you started a nonprofit or you got hired into one and you're finding a dysfunctional relationship with your board, I think, there's no better time than than now to stop and go, how can I approach this differently? How can we fix this? How can we make this better and make this a truly a team that is working together to accomplish a common goal? Wow, Hardy, this has been really, really great. Super helpful information. We always close with a few questions. What's one thing that makes you feel most connected to your community, to your work, whatever it might be?
What makes me feel most connected, and this would apply to nonprofit board members as well, so it's like a 2 for 1 answer here, is feeling like I'm making a difference, feeling like I'm having an impact, feeling like that my opinion matters and it's valued.
And to tie it back in, the thing that's necessary for you to feel that way is communication.
Absolutely.
Who in the world of nonprofits would you most like to take to lunch?
Oh my goodness gracious. There are so many amazing individuals. I don't know. Gosh, I would have a list. Just so many. I'll tell you what. The person I would really, really like to be able to spend more time with is Simone Joyo. And Simone Joyo passed away just a few years ago. And Simone was a very, very special individual. And I don't know, a champion contrarian. She refused to accept the status quo. Anyone probably involved in fundraising, AFP, certainly is going to know the name of Simone Joyo. I was extremely fortunate to have a relationship with her. She was a beta reader for my book. She provided just a wonderful endorsement for the book, and she passed away about a month after I got her beta reader comments for the book, and that's someone I just really is one of those. I just wish I had one more opportunity to visit individuals. Special person.
Well, I'm sorry about that. She sounds amazing. I'm going to have to look into her. Finally, what aspect of your job brings you the most joy?
What really helps me get joy is seeing organizations, individuals letting me know, hey, Hardy, thank you for that speech you gave. Thank you for that workshop. Thank you for the book. Wow, you were on point. It resonated with me. I got some great tips from you. I wish I had your book earlier. It's working, it's helping. You are making a difference. So I guess just hearing that,
Sure.
okay, it's working. There's an
Knowing
impact.
knowing that the thing you're spending your time on and your passion on is actually connecting. That's of course, yeah. Well, thank you so much. How can people find you? Obviously, there's the book "Stop the Blame Game" by Hardy Smith. They can check that out. I'm assuming anywhere you can get books or what. But how else can people connect with you?
I'm in Barnes and Noble. I'm on the Indie portal. You can get my book. It's accessible in any bookstore. You can order it online. Amazon it's a bestseller on Amazon, so check that out. It's available in the Kindle version also if you like the Kindle
Sure.
platform. hardysmith.com is
There you
my
go.
website. So you can find me easily, hardysmith.com.
Perfect. Well, Hardy, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I'm sure our listeners are going to have a lot of things to think about with their board members and their relationships after this. But it's been great talking to you.
Matt, thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. Again, congratulations to you and getting the Nonprofit Connect podcast launched, such a valuable resource for our nonprofit world. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Here we are at the end. You made it. Thank you so much for listening this far. And if you'd like to hear more from Nonprofit Connect brought to you by Rogue Creatives, well then make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on so you don't miss out. Because you don't want to miss out. You want to be on the in, you want to be on the inner circle. You want to know what's going on. Also, if you're interested in working with us or want to reach out or tell us how amazing we are, visit our website, npconnect.roguecreatives.com. You can get all the info there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Well, we won't see you. We'll hear you. Well, you'll hear us. Whatever. Bye. Nonprofit Connect with Matt Barnes is hosted and executive produced by me, Matt Barnes, with an assist by my chaos coordinator, Tiffany Pope. Production is by our amazing friends over at Fame, the B2B podcast agency, along with Belinda Carter-Thompson and the team here at Rogue Creatives. Production lead is Luke Audi at Fame. Writing is by Sam Hollis at Fame and Matt Barnes and Taylor Bolanos from Rogue Creatives. Nemanja Koljaja of Fame is our audio editor, and Arslan Yakub from Fame is our video editor. Creative direction is by Corey Hill of Rogue. Our artwork is designed by Hopo Kelly and Joshua Marino at Rogue, and Ian Salas of Fame. Theme music is composed and performed by Jared Atherton of Chapters. Luke Audi of Fame does our booking and our guest relations. Huge thanks to our amazing guest for joining us for this episode, and to all of you incredible listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, and I don't know why you wouldn't have, don't forget to help us spread some good by giving us a good review. Preferably, 5 stars with lots of words saying how amazing we are on whatever platform you're listening on. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it is. Also, tell your friends and subscribe so we can come straight into your potholes each and every time we have a new episode. For more information about Nonprofit Connect or to join us at a live event here in Orange County, California, visit our website, npconnect.roguecreatives.com. We'll catch you next time. This has been a Rogue Creatives production.